So we wanted to talk about misfires and how those kind of correlate to your vehicle. A misfire, everybody's like, yeah, my car's missing and I need a spark plug, you know. Misfires are generally a symptom. They're not a cause for something. A misfire is, my car is having an issue, but it doesn't actually tell you what's going on. There are many things that can cause a misfire to happen. Could be worn spark plugs, could be worn ignition coils, could be lack of compression. But usually when you have a misfire condition, that is telling you is there's another issue going on. And actually the misfire is not something that you can correct just by changing a part. Generally, you got to do some testing and figure that stuff out. So what are common symptoms of a misfire? It can be a number of things. You can get a rough idle, a shaking condition. So there's a few different systems that can contribute to a misfire condition. The first one I want to talk about is ignition systems. If you have a worn or fouled spark plug, that can cause a misfire condition to happen. If you have an ignition coil that's starting to fail or a spark plug wire that's broken, that can cause misfires to happen. If your timing is off, if you have any kind of timing issues, that can also cause a misfire to happen in the ignition side of things. So the next one's going to be fuel. If you don't have proper fuel delivery, there's nothing in there for that spark plug to ignite. So if you have a dirty fuel filter, that's going to restrict the flow of fuel. If you have a ignition or a fuel injector that is starting to plug off or is not allowing as much fuel as it should because it's gotten weak over time, that can cause a misfire to happen. And if you have no fuel pressure at all, that's going to cause multiple misfires to happen across multiple cylinders. The other thing can be air delivery. If you have a vacuum leak, like a PCV line that's been removed, or a vacuum line that's been removed throughout the course of checking the airbox, or even if you've removed a sensor and you've tried to start that car, that can cause misread air to enter the system. So now we have too much air in the system and the system doesn't know about it. That's also going to cause a misfire. And then you have worn engine components. And this one is one of the ones that is more difficult for us to diagnose. If you have a cylinder head gasket that's failed and allowing coolant to enter the combustion chamber, coolant doesn't burn like fuel does, so it causes a misfire condition to happen. If you have worn piston rings, that's allowing oil to come in, which is also reducing compression. If you don't have high enough compression, that is also going to cause a misfire condition to happen. So if you have excessively worn engine components, that can also lead to a misfire condition happening. So one of the final components or systems that can cause misfires to happen is electronic sensors. If you have anything that's related to the fuel and air delivery of the vehicle, like map sensors, oxygen sensors, things like that, if they're failing and not reading right, they're providing misinformation to the ECM, which is the computer of the engine. And when the computer thinks one thing, but in reality, something that's actually happening is completely different, it's going to cause all kinds of weird things to happen, which usually result in a misfire condition. Should we not ignore a misfire condition? One, it's costly. You're basically just burning fuel that's not burning, so that's costing you money, poor fuel economy. It can damage other components. It can actually take out ignition coils if you have a worn spark plug. I'll explain that a little bit more in the future. It can damage the catalytic converter, and that's the main thing here that a misfire can do, is damage the cat. Those can be super expensive. I mean, we're talking $5,000 to $10,000 on some vehicles, all because of an ignored misfire condition. Now, manufacturers, they all have their own recommended service interval to when you should change your spark plugs. One of the most common things I've seen lately is we have customers come in and they have a misfire condition, their check engine light's on. So we spend about $250 to diagnose why the check engine light's on, just to determine that it's due to worn spark plugs, when if those spark plugs would have been changed under regular maintenance when they're recommended, that misfire condition never would have happened, and we never would have had to spend the money on diagnosing it just to find out it was, oh, we just need to do some maintenance on this vehicle. The other thing that's really important here is spark plugs, as they wear, as this little electrode wears, you get a gap in between the top of the strap here and this electrode. And as that gap increases, the resistance in this spark plug increases. The ignition coil sits right on top of this, and it's what delivers the electronic spark to the spark plug. Well, as the resistance increases, it requires more electricity to come through the spark plug to get the spark plug to fire. When you do that, it can actually damage ignition coils. So now you've gone from a misfire condition to not only needing a spark plug, but also needing an ignition coil, which can also be expensive. So we found that we can save money through routine maintenance just by doing it at the recommended interval, or even before. Doing it before is even more preferred. That way you prevent any kind of high resistance in the spark plugs, which could take out ignition coils, and you prevent any spent money in diagnostics just to find out we needed to do some maintenance. If you have any questions about spark plugs, ignition coils, misfires, please let us know in the comments below. We'd be happy to answer that for you.